A van is detonated as police hunt for the Easter Sunday bombers who attacked Catholic churches in Sri Lanka. The horrific evil is the latest in a modern-day persecution of Catholics worldwide. We'll have that story. Brooklyn's Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio baptizes a large number of new Catholics as the church grows stronger at Easter time. Easter Sunday outside Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Currents News' Michelle Powers reports from there as street music fills the air. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Ed Wilkinson. Liz Faublas is off. The Easter church bombings against Catholic houses of worship in Sri Lanka should never have happened. Security forces, who were warned that terror strikes were imminent, apparently did nothing to stop them. As we record the program tonight, nearly 300 people are dead. Currents News' Emily Druby reports the latest on this still developing story.
Fallout after Easter Sunday's deadly Sri Lanka attacks continuing on Monday as a bomb-filled van exploded during a police-controlled detonation in the capital. Sri Lankan officials now apologizing for ignoring warnings about the attacks that came in weeks ago.
There was a breach, and as well as there's been a big, massive miscommunication, or somebody had taken this whole intelligence report very lightly and thought, no, it's not possible. But they had all information.
The coordinated bombing started just before 9 a.m. Sunday morning. 3 churches holding Easter services were attacked along with 3 hotels. Hours later, 2 additional explosions, one in private housing and one near the National Zoo. Officials say 7 suicide bombers were involved. Nearly 300 are dead, among them at least 4 Americans, including Dieter Kowalski of Denver, who was in the country on a work trip. President Trump offering condolences, while U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo saying the loss of American life has brought the fight home.
We mourn the loved ones of the victims, some of whom we can confirm were indeed U.S. citizens. This is America's fight, too.
3 Christian churches all targeted. Pope Francis praying for the wounded during Easter services.
Alla comunità cristiana.
I wish to show my affectionate closeness to the Christian community, hit while gathered in prayer, and to all the victims of such cruel violence.
Here at home, local Catholic reaction has been swift. Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio condemning the attacks.
It's sad that there's religious intolerance in the world today where everyone should have the right to practice their own religion the way they want. Certainly that is what we believe as Catholics, and it's unfortunate that people have that kind of hatred for others, that they would kill them when they're in worship of God.
Also on Easter Sunday, Cardinal Timothy Dolan calling the reaction of Sri Lanka's Christians inspiring.
There's already a resilience. There's a hope. There's a conviction that this will not extinguish our faith, and we will not allow this evil to win. They're the ones that give us hope. They're the ones that have really interiorized the message of Easter.
While no one has claimed responsibility, Sri Lankan officials blaming local radical Muslim group National Tawfiq Jamaat for the brutal attacks. Authorities have declared a state of emergency. A curfew is in place and a social media blackout is in effect for a second day in hopes of containing the violence and spread of miscommunication. At this hour, nearly 300 people killed in the attacks, but with more than 500 injured, that death toll could rise. Ed?
Emily, what do we know about how this investigation is developing?
Ed, it's the worst attack in the country since their civil war ended about 10 years ago. 24 people have been arrested, and officials are saying they believe the local jihadist group had to have international help to pull off an attack of this magnitude. The investigation is still ongoing. FBI and Interpol are assisting.
Emily, thanks for that report. The New York Police Department is urging New Yorkers to be vigilant in the wake of the Easter church bombings. Heavily armed NYPD officers surrounded St. Patrick's Cathedral in Midtown on Easter Day. The department says it's monitoring all events in Sri Lanka, but adds there's no known link to New York City at this time. Police beefed up patrols on Staten Island, which is a popular area with some Sri Lankans fleeing the country's civil war and the financial crisis that followed. The Easter church bombings are the latest example of a deadly anti-Christian persecution that has been plaguing the world. Currents News' Tim Hoffman reports on the growing evil.
The latest bombings in Sri Lanka, part of a pattern of attacks against modern-day Christians. The all-too-familiar scenes of violence on the minds of church leaders like New York's Cardinal Timothy Dolan.
It just doesn't seem to end, does it? The persecution of believers throughout the world. And Christians especially, seem to feel the brunt of it.
To me, it's such a cowardly act for people to kill other people while they're worshiping.
Brooklyn Bishop Gregory Mansour is the chairman of Catholic Relief Services. The international aid organization works closely with Christians in nearly 170 countries, many where Christianity is a minority.
They cannot even make the sign of the cross or bring in a Bible. It's a sad state of affair that we cannot allow people to worship.
This is a story that we continue to follow.
In January, Currents News broke into Net TV's special live coverage of World Youth Day with Pope Francis. 2 church bombings in the Philippines, killing at least 20 people and wounding about 100 more. In 2017, 2 church bombings in Egypt killed 45 Coptic Christians during Palm Sunday services. A year earlier, an attack in Lahore, Pakistan on Easter Sunday, killing 75 Christians, wounding 300 more. Nearly 150 victims killed during the 2015 Easter season when militants attacked a university in Kenya. Bishop Mansour says though many attacks are politically driven, people should devote their time to God rather than politics.
Don't invest everything in this party or in this party. Invest a little bit. Invest completely in the humanitarian work of Christ.
A sentiment that, if taken to heart, could help end the slaughter of innocent Christians around the world. Tim Harfman, Currents News.
Stay tuned. In moments, Crux editor John Allen will join us. He'll talk more about the Easter church bombings. He says the attacks are tragic but hardly surprising. That's still ahead in this newscast. Undeterred by the Easter church bombings in Sri Lanka, Christians are celebrating that the Lord is risen and the church is getting stronger. Bishop DiMarzio presided at a special liturgy, the Easter Vigil Mass, where new Catholics are welcomed into the faith. Once again, Currents News' Tim Harfman reports, this time from Queens.
A single candle shining in the dark church, a dramatic demonstration of the Lord.
The Easter candle symbolizes Christ, who is the light of the world, and so we light that first from the new fire, and then we bring it in procession up the aisle.
At St. John Vianney Church in Flushing, Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio led the Easter Vigil Mass, the celebration that Christ is risen.
The Easter Vigil reminds us of the resurrection. We remember that the Lord, during this time from Good Friday to Easter Sunday, as we say in the Creed, descended into hell. He went to free all of the souls that had been before him who were faithful, to give them the entrance into heaven.
The holiest of nights is also the joyous time when Bishop DiMarzio welcomes new Catholics into the church. With holy water, he baptized nearly 50 men and women and 3 young children. Anointed with chrism, most are confirmed into the faith and receive the Holy Spirit. All except the children receive Holy Communion. Across the Brooklyn Diocese, over 550 are sacramentally initiated into Catholicism. Rachel Lynn, now a parishioner at St. John Vianney, explained why becoming Catholic is so important for her life.
Life is very precious and it's very short, so just like where Jesus wants us to use our life to do our best to love, so it just makes me have more faith.
Rachel wants to spread the good news of the risen Lord to those who have turned away from the church.
If others are being lost, we can also have to talk to them and to understand, like it's also to guide them also to Jesus.
Most of the new Catholics receiving the sacraments at the Easter Vigil are Chinese, the fastest growing Catholic community in the diocese. Yu, another new Catholic, said the large gathering inspires him to learn more about Catholicism.
It makes you want to come to church more, it makes you want to educate yourself a lot more.
In order for him and the other new Catholics to make Christ the center of their lives. In Flushing, Tim Harfman, Currents News.
Easter is the most important day of the year on the Catholic calendar, marking Christ's resurrection. The leaders of Catholics in New York City celebrated the holy day. At St. Patrick's Cathedral, Cardinal Dolan led the opening procession before Mass. Bishop DiMarzio celebrated Mass at the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph, and he spoke about the gift of religious freedom in the United States.
We're very fortunate in our country to be able to worship the way we wish and to be able to share our beliefs openly with others in the public forum.
Life is a share of dying and rising. Life is a share of bad and good. Life is a share of sin and grace. And God is with us at all times. He's with us when we're on the cross. He's with us when we rise from the dead, and that gives us hope.
Cardinal Dolan also offered prayers for Christians in Sri Lanka. Pope Francis greeted pilgrims at the Vatican with his Easter message addressed to the city and the world. The Holy Father spoke of peace.
Before the many sufferings of our time, may the Lord of life not find us cold and indifferent. May he make us builders of bridges, not walls. May the one who gives us his peace end the roar of arms.
Francis also said the risen Christ shines light on the darkness of conflict. There's a lot more news ahead. An update with the latest developments on the Easter Church bombings in Sri Lanka. Crux editor John Allen is moments away with his insight on what's become a modern-day Christian persecution. Easter at Notre Dame Cathedral as music fills the streets of Paris. Currents News' Michelle Powers is on the scene. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@thesalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We will be right back. Updating our top story tonight, the Easter Church bombings in Sri Lanka. Authorities are admitting they received warnings that terrorists planned to attack Catholic churches, but they failed to take action. The Sri Lankan government is blaming a little-known Islamic group for the devastating Holy Day violence that has claimed hundreds of lives. A dusk-to-dawn curfew is in effect in Sri Lanka's capital city, Colombo, and the blackout of major social media has been imposed. Sri Lankan police have arrested at least 24 people so far in connection with the Easter Church bombings. And now joining us for more on the Easter Church bombings and the modern-day Christian persecution is the editor-in-chief of Crux, John Allen. John, how ironic that only a few months ago in January we had to break into our coverage of Pope Francis in Panama for World Youth Day to report on the breaking news of the bombing of a Catholic cathedral in the Philippines. We spoke with you, but now it seems like this modern-day persecution of Christians is getting worse. What's your read on it?
Inarguably, the persecution of Christians is bad and getting worse. And statistically speaking, Christians are the most persecuted religious community on the planet, in part because Christianity is the largest religion on the planet, about 2.3 billion people, 2/3 of whom today live in the developing world. They live outside the West. They're often in some pretty rough neighborhoods. In many cases, they're living as minorities. Open Watch International estimates about 200 million Christians around the world live every day with the real danger of physical assault, arrest, persecution, torture, imprisonment, in some cases, as we saw last Sunday, even death. It is simply a reality of our time. And the uglier and even sadder reality is that often these incidents do fall on the holiest days of the Christian calendar, particularly Christmas and Easter, because those are days when churches are especially full, and from the point of view of warped terrorist logic, they are especially ripe targets.
You know, the experts claim that as many as 100,000 Christian martyrs die every year for the faith. Now, you know, when I was young, they told us we probably would never have to die for our faith. But how do we begin to get this, get a hold on this thing?
One of the problems in terms of trying to tell the story of anti-Christian persecution around the world is that here in the developed West, in the United States, for instance, there are limits on religious freedom, worrying limits that we have to deal with, but we don't experience anything like the kind of threats to life and limb that Christians in other parts of the world do. I mean, I grew up in rural western Kansas in the 70s and 80s. My idea of suffering for the faith was eating fish sticks and mac and cheese on Fridays during Lent. I mean, that's as close as I ever got to carrying the cross. But the reality of today's world is much different. Anti-Christian persecution is the greatest human rights scourge of our time. It's also the least told story of our time. What has to happen is that we've got to break that wall of silence. From a Catholic point of view, what needs to happen is that from the Pope on down, in the pulpits on Sundays, which is still the primary gathering place for Catholics all around the world, there has to be consistent messaging around this issue.
With the ISIS persecutions of Christians, a myth was growing that religious violence was confined just to the Middle East and it was committed only by Islamic terrorists. But that's not the case, is it?
No. Now, the example of Sri Lanka is still unclear. There has been no claim of responsibility. Many experts are saying it has the hallmarks of organized Islamic extremism. But the truth of it is that if you are a Christian in Sri Lanka, normally on a day-to-day basis, what you have to worry about is not Islamic extremists, it's Buddhist extremists. It is a majority Buddhist country. About 70% of the population is Buddhist. And while the vast majority are peace-loving and tolerant, there is a hardline nationalist fringe that believes in a kind of Sri Lanka exclusively for Buddhists. In other parts of the world, India, for instance, the threat is Hindu extremism. In other parts of the world, China, for instance, it's the state that doesn't tolerate at least certain forms of expression of Catholic Christian belief. That is also true, for instance, in North Korea and in other places. So while Islamic extremism is a real and present danger to Christians in many parts of the world, the problem is much bigger and more complicated than that.
John, thanks for your insights this afternoon. Unfortunately, it's a topic that we probably will be returning to. But thank you very much for today.
Anytime. Glad to be with you.
John has written an in-depth column on the epidemic of Christian persecution in today's world. The article is available to read right now on the Tablet's website, thetablet.org. The latest now on the rebuilding of Notre Dame Cathedral after last week's disastrous blaze. Many Parisians celebrated the Easter Vigil at the Church of St. Gervais on Saturday night. At Notre Dame, firefighters are declaring that the last hot points inside the famous symbol of the Catholic faith are now extinguished. And after 6 days, streets around the cathedral are reopened. About 50 experts are investigating what caused the massive fire, still believed to be accidental. The Notre Dame Inferno silenced the Catholic Church's ability to make music at Easter time. Currents News' Michelle Powers, reporting from Paris, tells us how music was still rising to the heavens.
Every Easter for the past 850 years, music has come from the towers of Notre Dame, and a group of musicians has made a promise that this year it will still sing. Matthew Bulle is conducting the performance of his life with a group of people that's never even played together.
The world's best composers walked through the doors of Notre Dame, played in the cathedral. It cannot go silent now.
Notre Dame de Paris has always been a haven for those whose callous fingers pluck strings and press the keys of woodwinds. But perhaps for the first time, not one note is rising from the bell towers this Easter Sunday. Instead, they come from another place, the side of the Seine. It's not a place of majesty and grandeur like the inside of the cathedral, but the music, the notes, and the rhythms are the same.
I just bought my ticket in last minute offer, and I was so lucky to get here.
This concert's spontaneous, a rendezvous.
When we saw it burning, we knew we had to do something.
Matthew immediately created a Facebook event inviting anyone with passion to play. Nearly 30 performers from all over the world gathering together at the homeland for musicians, alongside the spot so many forms of music were invented, just feet from where musical notes were first written down.
It touched everybody all over the planet, just like it touched all of us musicians.
Many making the great escape for a great cause, a chance to honor history.
even though we're not playing inside, we're still playing outside for the cathedral. And in some essence, we're creating history, and it's a historic moment to say that we're here, we're standing by the French.
Notre Dame became the musical capital of the world in the Middle Ages. Le Grand Orgue, with 8,000 pipes sending melodies to the heavens for centuries. Today, there would be songs of praise and resurrection, and there are. Musicians gathering to perform like they always have.
Sometimes music is better than words.
And the beat goes on. Not too bad for their first time playing together. In Paris, Michelle Powers, Currents News.
Tomorrow on Currents News, Michelle will report on the artist who is painting a memorial to Notre Dame. Still to come on this edition of Currents News, the White House is transformed for Easter, what the President, the First Lady, and a lot of children did on the lawn today. Currents News isn't the only place to get great coverage of Easter. The tablet has a lot to offer, and we'll tell you about that next. We'll be right back. This is the most important time of the year for Catholics around the world. For more outstanding coverage of Easter and Christ's resurrection, head over to the tablet. Already posted at thetablet.org are many wonderful photographs of the Easter Vigil in the Brooklyn Diocese. Pictures and companion stories will also appear in the next printed version of the tablet. Your support for the tablet is needed to ensure that Catholic journalism will thrive well into the future. If you subscribe to the tablet, you'll save up to 55%. Go to the website, thetablet.org/home55, or call 877-883-8356. And the tablet has a brand new page called Our Diocesan Family, where you can submit your pictures from the world to see. They're looking for pictures of your family members' baptism, Holy Communion, confirmation, and marriage. Plus, you can also submit photos of special events at Catholic schools and academies. To submit, go to thetablet.org/Our Diocesan Family. That webpage again is thetablet.org/Our Diocesan Family, and your picture may be published in an upcoming issue of the tablet. The White House was on a roll earlier today, an egg roll. One of the oldest traditions from the South Lawn, the 141st Easter egg roll took place earlier today. The First Lady encouraged the children to make cards for U.S. troops. Before the festivities, President Trump greeted the attendees with the holiday good wishes.
I want to wish everybody a very happy Easter. Our country is doing fantastically well, probably the best it's ever done economically. We're setting records on stock markets. We're setting records with jobs, and unemployment numbers are the lowest they've ever been. 50 years in many groups, in historically the lowest numbers we've ever had. Regulations, low taxes. Our country has never done better.
President Trump also went on to thank the First Lady and the White House Historical Association for planning the event. Well, that is Currents News. I'm Ed Wilkinson. For updates 24/7, go to our website, currentsny.tv. Thank you for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.